So recently, a young lady called Charlotte, who's doing her journalism degree at Leeds University, wants to interview me to find out my views on fox hunting and shooting and sort of country pursuits and hunt saboteurs and antis and this sort of whole city-country dynamic, that sort of thing. So without any further ado, what follows is what happened.
Okay, so first of all, I want to know what SRS means.
Oh, everybody asks me that. I honestly, and I say this a lot to my subscribers, I can't tell you. It's nothing horrible, but it's nothing to do with shooting or anything, and it's just something random.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just wondering if it had anything to do with, some kind of shooting bird.
No, it's actually really geeky, but as I said, I can't go into it, unfortunately. For various reasons, which if I told you, you could figure out why.
Okay. And so, you've had a read through some of my questions and stuff like that, but basically I just want to get some more, you give thorough opinions anyway, and a lot of, statistics, viewpoints, just every videos. But I've just got a few questions here that I think would be, great for my project, really. So,
cool.
Everyone enjoys, going out in the country, these big estates, you see National Trust walks, National Trust members, everyone loves it, especially when they come from urban communities.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering if you think that there's been a specific divide that keeps widening between the rural and the urban communities.
Yeah, well, there is. It's basically people have got really detached from where their food comes from, and it's you get this argument from like vegans and stuff as well, where they're just like sort of saying, oh, it's terrible to raise animals and all the rest of it. But if you fly over the UK and you see what there is, we've just got like a patchwork quilt of agriculture where we've got all of these crops being grown, which are to feed people. We've completely changed the environment, and so we have to manage it. So when they come into the countryside, they don't understand that because they just go to Tesco's or whatever, the food's there, they go into a restaurant, they just buy their food, and they don't really understand the processes that we have to go through in order to sustain this environment that we've created. It's completely sort of fake. We don't have any kind of wilderness anymore in the UK. It's all manufactured. So yeah, that's what's created this divide, really, and I think it's largely based upon ignorance, and people tend to project themselves onto animals and all that kind of stuff, and they don't really kind of understand how it all works, really. I mean, there's a lot of specifics. It depends really what you're talking about specifically in terms of the divide.
Yeah, I just mean, I wrote about in some of these points, I just thought, counter-urbanisation, that was something I learnt about in GCSE geography ages ago, but when you actually think about it, a lot of people are moving from urban areas into, well, not so much countryside, maybe the more wealthy, if they can afford like a nice big house in the country, classic British ideal. But, I just don't think that, and you don't really think that people actually understand, why things are the way they are. I think it's a matter of education.
Yeah, well, my dad had this problem with his next door neighbour. He moved in not that long ago. And he used to complain about gunfire because my dad will shoot stuff in the garden and things. He doesn't go on big shoots so much anymore because he's getting on a bit. But if he sees a rabbit or something, he'll come in and he'll just let it have it. And he has pigeons and stuff that come in, and he complains about it. But then one day, oh, you still there? It's lagging a bit. That's good. You're still there. One day he calls my dad, and my dad goes round to his house, and he's got a chicken coop, and there's a fox basically all twisted up and caught up in the fence with a dead chicken right in front of it, and he's just like, oh, what am I going to do? And of course, my dad shot it, which he would.
Yeah.
But of course, at that point, he's just like, oh, I see the connection now. But people don't really understand it. They don't understand what nature's all about. It's it is tooth and claw. These animals are killing each other all the time, and there's different populations which don't sustain themselves. We have to sustain them because, as I said, because of agriculture. We've wiped out most of the big predators, and now we've just got foxes and badgers, and there's nothing that's going to keep their numbers down, for instance. So we have to sustain that. But it's also other species as well. I mean, you might have seen with the video I sent you on when I was wood pigeon shooting, and this guy was like complaining and stuff. And that's almost the same problem because they because of agriculture, their populations explode to a much higher percentage than would be natural, and it's all because they're eating the grain that we're growing. And so we've got a responsibility then to keep those numbers down. I mean, a lot of them will just die through the winter anyway, but those that survive are competing with other native species, which I would assume these urban people want to do well as well, I would have thought. But if we don't do anything about it, what we end up with is just a load of like basically crows and wood pigeon and no like wild species, because they can't compete anymore. So we have to do that. And with foxes, that they can decimate other populations like hedgehogs and lapwings and things like that. So if we don't control them, then they're just going to keep on increasing in number. So that's why we have to do it. In terms of fox hunting, you might be surprised, but I don't hunt, and I've never hunted. I'm not a hunting guy. I shoot them on occasion, not like every weekend, but every so often I'll shoot them, and I'll walk around looking for rabbits and things. And if I see one, I'll shoot it. But that's a reactive process. So a farmer will say to me, "Oh, I've got loads of lambs been taken." If you follow my Instagram, you'll see the last couple of weekends I've been taking the 243 out, and you see all this. You see these dead lambs and things. And he'll say, "Look, if you see one, shoot it." But at that point, I'm not looking at conservation. I'm just looking at it as in this is a problem that needs sorting out, and it's becoming an ever-increasing problem because people aren't hunting them anymore.
Yeah, that's when they're becoming, more pest-worthy. I forgot to write in this email that I sent you, but I recently interviewed a sheep farmer from home. I'm from Wales. There are so many sheep on Anglesey where I'm from.
Yeah.
And he says that young foxes will literally go out and, they can chase a rabbit for 10 minutes, or they can, there's a immobile lamb that's just been born on the floor, literally wanting to die because it's cold. They'll grab it. But then the young foxes will also just take the head and then they'll leave the body and then 5 other lambs and then just leave them there. So that's where the real issue is, economically, essentially, for the farmer. But then, it's saddening he was telling me, it's really, really quite heartbreaking. You're out long hours in the winter, just coming up to springtime, lambing, and you're up all night, and then, all your hard work is just completely diminished by these foxes. That's almost, quite similar, I think, to...
Yeah, absolutely. And people forget as well the relationship shepherds will have with their flock. And again, I debate about these sort of things fairly regularly, as well as lots of other random stuff. So if you check out my channel, you probably gather that. But if you talk to vegans, they don't see, and I'm not sort of picking on vegans here because I don't mean not all vegans, but a lot of they'll see those animals as not having no purpose. They're just like, well, what's the point in raising them just to kill them? And they almost see shepherds and stuff. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in the city see it like this, that they don't care about these animals, that they're just seeing them as a sack of meat that they're going to sell. But they don't. They have a relationship with these animals. They love these animals, and they want them to thrive. And when you come out into a field and you've got a lamb that you've sort of brought up, and suddenly it's been taken by a fox, it is genuinely upsetting for them, and it's a real problem. And lambs are so vulnerable, especially at this time of year, because they're almost tame. When I was out yesterday walking around, lambs will come right up to you. You can stroke them, and then the mother does come up to you and she stamps her foot because she doesn't want you near her babies, But yeah, they are so vulnerable, and they need to be looked after. They have to be, and it's not just for the lamb's sake, because as you say, it's easy food for the fox, and what you can then get is an increase in the fox population throughout the summer. They then start decimating other animals, like I said, hedgehogs, lapwings, lots of other species that we care about. And then for the fox, it's bad as well, because when it gets to the winter, the foxes, they start to starve, basically, because there isn't enough food for them. And they haven't been culled, so you've got foxes that are mangy and diseased and so on and so forth. And then they are competing with the healthy foxes. They're passing on diseases to the healthy foxes. And it causes a real problem. Now, from a shooting point of view, as I said, because it's reactive, I have to do it. But I've got, if I'm talking about conservation, I've got no way of telling what the condition of that fox is. If I'm lamping them and I'm seeing them through a crosshairs at 200 yards away, I can't see what condition they're in. But if you're hunting them with dogs, it's sustainable, because a healthy fox very rarely gets killed. It's only like a sick or a mangy or a sort of run to the litter or whatever, and those numbers get taken down. Fox hunting in itself doesn't actually kill a huge number of foxes, and you will actually still need to shoot them as well. But the point is, it keeps the population healthy. And through the winter, you don't need to shoot. You don't need to shoot as many as it approaches the winter, because they've been taken care of. But as time's going on, it's becoming more and more of a problem. We're having to shoot more and more foxes, and because you're shooting them almost randomly, you'll see the condition some of them are in, because they're suffering, because they're not being sustained properly. And you get the same thing with like deer, for instance. In fact, the League Against Cruel Sports bought a sort of deer estate, and their deer are in terrible condition. They're all like dying, and they're all full of disease and so on and so forth. And it's because they refuse to cull them. And it's because the thing is, if you don't cull the population, it poisons the entire population. Any population that grows large enough, it becomes a problem. And we saw it last year in the spring. Sorry, I don't mean to keep gibbering on. But in the spring last year, we had huge numbers of rabbits, like loads of rabbits. For whatever reason, the conditions were just right. It was really good. And, I could just go out for an hour and a half on a Saturday afternoon. I could shoot 3 or 4 rabbits quite easily. And then we had the harvest. And when we harvest, that's when I shoot all the wood pigeon. So I wasn't really looking at the rabbits. I come back after like 6 weeks, and the rabbits have just disappeared. There's like none. And it's because their population has grown to such a size that disease gets into them, myxomatosis and other diseases, and it just wipes out the entire population. And obviously with rabbits, there's, it's not much you can do about that. But with large animals, like talking about foxes and things, it's for their own good. You have to control them. So you've got this choice. What do you want to do? Do you want to just shoot them randomly, or do you want to do a bit of conservation to ensure that the population is really healthy? So, it's up to you, really.
Yeah, some really valid points there. But, I watched that video of yours with Alfie Moon in it. Now, that was really entertaining.
Do you know who Alfie Moon is?
Yeah, it was just...
you should do if you watch the video. Yeah, no, I mean the actual character, Alfie Moon. That isn't that's not his real name, right?
No, but I put it in inverted commas.
Yeah.
So, I watched your video of the debunking of the hunt sabs, and he quotes, "I've been around these guys for 35 years, and if I live to be 100 years, I'll never understand why they want to do what they do." You've pretty much explained why they want to do what they do there. But,
it wouldn't have taken them long to work that out.
Well, population control and conservation, essentially, and stuff like that. But, you do hear about these stories where, for example, I think it was the South Herefordshire, there's 2 members of the hunt, or 3 or something like that, who have been recently not prosecuted, they've just been rebailed, actually, because they were caught last November, caught fox cubs, and then they just threw them into the kennels, and then they captured these fox cubs, and then they just threw them into the kennels of the hounds, and 10 all secretly filmed, and then they were brought them out dead and just chucked them in the bin. Now that's where the sort of brutality comes into it, and I think that is, the hunt sabs, they have a right to sort of go to do that, but then when they sort of trespass, and hunts aren't really, well, they are essentially, but
I would argue even when there is a situation like that where you've got somebody being unnecessarily cruel, it's still not their job to start running around being a vigilante. I mean, the police will tell you that. If you've got like a neighbourhood watch scheme, do the police want you wandering around the streets with baseball bats looking for like burglars or something? No, they don't. Why would you do that? If you think, I'm suspicious, I think that there might be a crime going on here, and instead of doing what those guys did, going there and filming it, all right? I mean, was it them who filmed it, or was it wasn't the guys themselves who filmed it, or?
So I think what they did was they set up secret cameras in the dead of night, and then just like in the view of the kennels, and they'd also found the fox cubs in like a shed sort of thing, just in a sort of feed barrel.
So these sabs, instead of after discovering these cubs and reporting it to the police, instead they set up cameras and left them there to be chucked in with the hounds. Does that sound like animal welfare to you? Does that sound like they could give a toss about the welfare of those cubs? It sounds to me like political point scoring to me. And yeah, sure, you know, in you know, no, human beings aren't perfect. There's always, in any group of people, there's going to be people who do things that are sort of not right, or, you know, whatever, immoral. But you know, that's for the police to deal with, isn't it? You know, you don't have a right to try and interfere with people directly, because, you know, you're often going to do more harm than good. In fact, with hunt sabs, they particularly do a lot of harm, because when they're going onto somebody's land, when they're hunting, for instance, for a start, they don't really know what the motivations of the hunters are. The vast majority of hunts are just trail hunting, because, you know, fox hunting is illegal now. I don't think it should be, but it is. And most of them are just going about their lawful business. And these guys come along, they cover their faces up, and they, you know, attack and intimidate them and things. But they also interfere with the hunt. Now, this is a real problem, because they'll go on and they have, and you'll have seen on that video with Alfie Moon, where they have these sort of fake whips that they whip at the dogs to intimidate the dogs and try and get the dogs to go in another direction. But what invariably happens is they actually end up forcing the hounds onto a fox, which those hounds wouldn't have done otherwise. Or they make them run out into the road so they get hit by a car or whatever. The thing is, that's just not a way to carry on. You know, there's lots of things I don't like, but I don't have the right to go and just try and use brute force to try and stop it from happening. You know, and if I suspect a crime, I'll go to the police and let them deal with it. That's what it's called being civilised. But make no mistake with these guys, right? You see them all dressed in black and they've got their faces covered. Why do you think that is? It's not just...
I asked you, why do you think that is? I just really have no idea.
Well, it's not just because they're breaking the law. They are breaking the law. That's why that guy is called Alfie Moon. And Alfie Moon, actually, and it's so annoying because I've forgotten what his real name is, because a subscriber of mine did a bit of research into Alfie Moon. And he actually works in a high school as a PE teacher. And that amazes me because, you know, he must have a criminal record. So I don't know how he managed to get that job in the first place, to be honest. But, you know, these people are doing this because mostly, not because of that, but because they're ashamed of what they're doing. They know what they're doing is morally reprehensible. They don't want their friends and family to see what they're doing. They don't want the wide world to see what they're doing. You know, it's the equivalent of being a particularly unpleasant YouTuber who's afraid to show his face and his real name and starts like throwing slurs at people. And you see this on YouTube all the time, because somebody will call somebody racist or whatever, and the guy will stand up and go, "All right, and what's your name then?" But they don't want to do that, because they know that they don't have the bollocks to, sorry, excuse my language, but they don't have the bollocks to put their name and their face to that opinion and stand by their principles. And the reason they don't is because they're cowards who've got no integrity. And that's basically what all hunt sabs are. They're pathetic. I'm not getting passionate here, but they are. They're pathetic little weasels. They're weak people who haven't got the principles to truly stand up for what they believe in. If they truly believed what they're doing was right and just, they would show their faces, they would say what their real name was, and they would stand up and say, "No, this is what I believe in." But they obviously don't believe in it, do they?
No, it's not about animal welfare. After the research that I've done for this project, I really don't think that it is at the end of the day. But you're exactly right, you know, and this whole battle and political point scoring, I mean, the military is higher. It's very weird, you know, to see in all these videos that they put online. I mean, actually, a very close family friend of ours, she was out hunting, I think I'm not sure, down south somewhere, where it was still pretty much, there was still fox hunting and trail hunting, using it almost as a bit of an alibi, I think. But a bunch of sabs, they were there, and she'd sort of come away from the field with her daughter, who was on a pony.
Okay.
And then she had seen them with a camera, and she said, "Why are you filming my daughter? You know, stop filming my daughter." And they almost provoke by, you know, shoving the camera in
their face. Will, yeah. They'll come right in your face as well and go, "Fuck you," you know, sort of trying to have a go at you. Because what they really want, more than anything, is for you to turn around and punch them in the mouth, and they've got it on camera, and then they can use that as propaganda against you.
That's what's happened. So one of the sabs had gone up to her and, you know, almost tried to act as though the horse was like running them over and stuff, even though there was a feeder for sheep in between them. Yeah. And he goes like that, and he touches her leg, and she just goes, "Get off me!" And she cracks a whip in the air, and then he falls back almost like this.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
As it hits. And I was just like, you know, I can't be opinionated in my project, but, you know, I've got my opinions, and
the analogy is what they're trying to do. They're trying to play the victim, and what they want to do is is make out, as far as they're concerned, that this is equal somehow. That yeah, some of them are a bit bad and a bit violent, but so are the hunters, and so it's the same. But it's not the same, is it? I mean, look at you now. You're sat in your house and you're minding your own business. If I came in your house right now and started shouting at you, intimidating you, I've got my face covered, I start pushing you around, and then you turn around and punch me in the mouth, is that an equal exchange? No, it's not, because you don't want me there. You just want me to bugger off and leave you alone. I'm the one who's coming onto your property. I'm the one who's trying to cause a problem. You're not. You're just going about your business. And if you are doing something possibly unlawful, then yeah, call the police. It's nothing to do with you. It's morally reprehensible what these guys do. And like I said, I don't even have a horse in this race. I don't ride. I'm not a hunter. I did as a boy. We had the terrier men and stuff, so I'd sort of hang out with them and do a few things. And I was sort of blooded as a young boy after the fox had been caught and stuff. But it's not something I'm particularly into, really. But I see the way these guys behave, and I can't tolerate it. And it's there's an analogy here, and and it's annoying because people know that I've seen some of the questions before you sent them. But you mentioned the class warfare element, and you're sort of saying, this other guy's basically saying it's not a class thing and so on. But and the thing is, it is true to say there's lots of people involved in hunting who are working class, but they're not the people who ride for the most part. You'll know because you ride. It's an expensive hobby, and if you've got a really decent horse, it's a very, very expensive hobby. I mean, just do livery costs alone is a lot of money. The working classes who are involved in hunting are like, the terrier men, or the other guys involved in it, the wider community who are employed. But those aren't the guys that they're really going after. They're going after the men on horseback because what they see is snooty sort of gentry or whatever. And there's truth to that. That's the thing. They are right to a certain extent. I mean, I remember as a boy, one of the things I didn't like about fox hunting is that you would get some sort of toff who's come from the city, or a lot of the time, who isn't even from round there, and he isn't riding to hunt. He's hunting to ride. So he wants to dress up and he wants to jump over the jumps and he wants to chase the fox, but he's not really into it from a conservation element. He's just in it for fun. But that's not a reason to stop somebody doing it. They can do what they like. You don't like it, well, don't do it then. I mean, it's a question of that. But you see these guys and the way they dress and stuff with their faces covered. When they're not doing this, they're causing havoc in other places. I mean, that Alfie Moon guy, he said himself he's done protests to anti-vivisection and stuff. My mum was a Crown prosecutor all her life, and she used to prosecute these guys on a regular basis. These are the sorts of guys who sets fire to businesses or throws paint at people as they come out of work. You break into people's property, go around people's houses and intimidate them because they work in a certain place. These are really unpleasant people. I mean, when you saw the Donald Trump's inauguration recently, and we saw these Antifa protesters wandering around on the streets, smashing the place up, well, could you tell the difference between them and hunt saboteurs in the way they're behaving? What's the mentality? The mentality is, I think I've got the right to force my view onto somebody else. I think my view is objectively true. Now, everyone's opinion isn't objectively true; it's subjective. But they think that they're so right that they have a right to force that onto other people, and it's morally wrong. There's a strong element of very leftist mentality, I think, with those kinds of people. And yeah, I mean, any one of these hunt saps, if I sat them down and asked their opinions on all manner of subjects, I will know automatically what their opinions will be.
Yeah, it's the same. I've done a lot of research, and it was very, very difficult to get an interview with a hunt saboteur.
I'm not surprised, because they're not very intelligent usually. Sorry.
Exactly. Anonymity and stuff like that, but this guy actually gave his name. I'm not going to use his name in this, and I'm not going to tell him to say which group he's from, because we decided that was what is going to happen. Okay. But talking about how they go around doing these things, trespassing, first of all, and then turning up to a nice village green, people outside the pub having a nice pint, glass of port, tacking up the horses. When they turn up and the police are called, or they call the police on the hunt before they've even started, the police take the side of the hunt because they aren't the ones causing trouble. Essentially, it's the sabs. So I asked him, I said, have any of sabotaging hunts ended in the law enforcement getting involved? He said, yes, lots of times. And I said, how helpful are the police and other law enforcement in your opinion? And he said, in general, they are not helpful towards us at all. More often than not, they will immediately take the side of the hunt as they were seen as respectable members of the community.
Mm.
A lot of police will be local too, so will be friends of the hunt. There are obviously exceptions to this, and we have experienced police that will try to help. But unfortunately, it is difficult to prosecute hunts. Mm. And that just said to me, you must be causing, unruliness, and
civil unrest.
What people in rural places have seen as a lovely thing. Boxing Day hunt is quite a lovely thing to see, to wake up on Boxing Day and go out and dress up in your tweed and just go out and have a glass of.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a social occasion. It's and as I said, it is quite different to what I normally do. It's a bit like with pheasant shooting. I do shoot pheasants, but I don't go on organised shoots because to me, it's a bit fake because it's not. It's like glorified clay pigeon shooting, really. But it's a social.
My dad has a day every year, and he always gives me a peg. Me and my brother will share a peg, and it is nice. But unless he's invited, he won't go more than one day. And it's more, with the syndicate, he'll just sort of do it for all of his mates.
Yeah, it's a social thing, and it's nice. It's nice to dress up, and it's nice to have a nice day and have a drink, and do all of that. I mean, for me, I'd much rather spend a day pigeon shooting, where it's actual proper hunting. If you see what I mean, where I'm decoying them, and I have to check the land and know where the crops are for the pigeons, and where all of that stuff. There's a lot that goes into it. But the point is, that's another example of the ignorance we get, because people look at it from how I've just looked at it, and they'll think, oh, it's morally reprehensible then. And I'm like, no, I look at it and I'm like, well, for me, it's not real hunting. It's not as skilled as what I like to do. So therefore, it's not my cup of tea. But in terms of the effect it has on the environment, it's amazing. Because again, like I said before, we have this patchwork quilt of agriculture, and you've got a choice between what you use the land for. We can grow crops, and in which case, like I said, we'll have loads of problems with different species monopolising resources. Or we can grow pasture and have sheep and whatever on them, which creates habitats for other animals. Or even more amazingly, we can set land aside for pheasants or for partridge. And if we do that, we let the land become completely wild. And then there's lots and lots of habitats for lots and lots and lots of animals. So it's amazing. You're monetizing conservation, and as I said, people have a problem getting their head around this, because if they got what they want, we would destroy all of our wild spaces. As where what we have got is people with a bit of money who like to spend a day dressing up and shooting a few pheasants for a few months of the year, and the trade-off for that is it creates not only does it create a huge amount of employment, but it also creates large amounts of habitat which benefits all animals. So why would you have a problem with that? I mean, it's the same thing that happens in Africa with big game hunting, but I'm not going to get into that now because that's a really long conversation. But it's the same thing.
I saw the lion video as well, because I was just doing a bit of research mostly, and I tried to explain it to my housemates. I did see what you were saying about the employment and the money that it brings into the little communities, and in fact, the preservation of the wildlife, for a bit. But she just couldn't get her head around it, and I just said, well, if you look at a farmer who's got 10 goats and is sort of struggling, is not really going to get much money. If they got the opportunity to get £70,000 or dollars or whatever it is from shooting one lion that they've bred and then let out into nice wildlife.
Yeah, they've set the land aside for that purpose. It's immensely more profitable. It's it makes sense. But the thing is, it's like and again, you were saying about it being a sort of going back to what you were saying about an urban-rural divide. In a lot of ways, it's almost a left-right divide, as where an individualist versus collectivist mindset. And these people who are saying in Africa, for instance, oh, this big game hunting's terrible. It's like they're patting them on the head, saying, well, you just go along and make a nice little park for us. And it's just like, no, these people are just the same as you. They've got just as much right to want to have enough money to feed their family in a nice house and a nice car and do well as anyone else. So what is more wonderful than monetizing conservation? It's amazing, because the alternative is they just plough everything over and just grow crops on it, and then you just ruin the countryside. So it's an obvious choice, really, but people they start emotionalising these things, and they don't think logically, it's an emotional argument a lot of the time, and there's a great amount of anthropomorphism where they project their own qualities onto these animals. You know, I mean, it's only like yesterday I'm looking at these sheep, and you know, I look at it, and then you'll look on my Instagram, and there's a couple of lambs running off to their mother, and I look at that and think, oh, isn't that sweet? It's new life, it's spring, isn't it that wonderful? But they look at that and think, oh, look at them, you know, they're like in a prison camp, and they've got a 5 painted on them, and they're just waiting to die, and it's just like, yeah, but they're not human beings. They're animals. They don't see things the way you see them. They care about having somewhere nice to live, and hopefully not having too much of a brutal end. But going back to the foxes, that is a really brutal end, you know. So that's hopefully can be avoided. But again, with the fox thing, they talk about when the hounds rip them apart and how terrible it is, and it's like, you know, it is quite brutal. But so what? Why, you know? So what? Have you seen what a fox does to the animals it kills? They brutalise animals as well. They'll torture them. They'll take a rabbit and they'll play with it like a cat for like an hour at a time. Where my mum used to live, she used to live on a common near to where I am now. And you know, you could hear them at night. You hear rabbits screaming and screaming for like an hour at a time.
It's the most horrible thing to hear.
Yeah, and it's because the fox has got hold of it and they're playing with it because it's fun. And I don't blame the fox for that. It's in its nature. But if you're asking me to feel sorry for the fox when it goes through the same, but probably much less so, I don't care. To be honest, nature's tooth and claw. It's the real world, and it's like the animal rights versus animal welfare thing. You know. But they can't get their head around the idea that to have rights, they have to be reciprocal. So animals can't understand that, you know. And animals don't give rights to each other. They brutalise each other and treat each other in a horrendous way a lot of the time. So when you get sort of too emotional about it, about the way that they're killed, yeah, there's a level of brutality. So what? It's the way it is. It's nature. You know, nature is brutal. So.
Yes, and it is prey and predation.
Yeah.
Almost, but many people will argue against it. You know, there's always going to be an argument for and against that. Before this project started, before I'd done research, I always thought, you know, shooting foxes, you know, what if they're shot in the leg and then they die a slow, painful death? You know, it's always going to be a better way to fox hunt. But most of the time, it's not. Most of the time, it's a clean cut kill.
Well,
so
yeah. Well, especially in this country, because I don't mean to keep interrupting you. Especially in this country, because you have to use certain calibers to be able to shoot foxes. Like the minimum is like a 17 HMR. I don't expect you to know what all these things are, but one of the most common is a 223, and a 223 is what our military use in their machine guns. Yeah, their SA-80. You know, and you shoot a fox anywhere on the body with that. A fox is a small animal. It's got a rib cage about that size. The hydrostatic shock from the impact from that cartridge, that fox is not going to get over that. You know, if it does not die, it's not going to go anywhere. Do you see what I'm saying? And normally people use something like a 243, like I have. And again, if you look at my Instagram, you see what I did to a squirrel yesterday. I shouldn't have done it because it was just vaporised. but you know, it ain't going to get over that. It's just not. It just isn't ever going to get over that. So you know, shooting foxes is very clean. It's perfectly fine, and yeah, there's no problem with that. The only problem with it is that it's not selective, and it is a reactive process. It's not a proactive process. It's you know, I've got a problem. There's a couple of foxes around here killing these sheep. I need to kill them now. It's not thinking in the bigger picture. How do I conserve this fox population so it's less of a problem for me as well as them thriving, which is what fox hunting achieves, basically.
And also in that Fox Hunt Saboteurs debunked video, it was just eye-opening for me, really. It's just the denial and the just want to fight for something. They just, you know, even if they've got what they wanted, they got the Fox Hunting Act, they're still doing it, and they said even if that was completely, well, you know, when he said, I don't care whether they are laying trails or not, when 11,000 hounds are killed every year, the day I stop stabbing is the day the red coat is thrown on a bonfire somewhere. Yeah, but that was a specific quote that I cut out of that, because that was like a 2.5 hour video. It is annoying with hunt sabs, and I don't know if you've noticed this, if you've been talking to them, but they don't tend, and I'm being bitchy here, but they're not terribly bright normally, and they're not very good at like, you know, speaking what they believe in a believable way. So one of the things I like to do, if you look at my debunked series, is, and it's a very common shtick on YouTube generally with vloggers, where you'll get someone who disagrees with you, you'll chop up their footage, and then you'll do your reaction and so on and so forth. Trying to find a hunt sab
who does videos like that. It's impossible. All you get is this grainy footage of somebody running around with a camera going, oh, hunt scum or Tory scum, and all this. They're never actually able to stand there and put their face on the camera and give a decent argument to justify what they believe in. They don't seem able to do that, and it's frustrating because I'd really like to debate them, but they don't seem able to. They'd rather to resort to violence, basically.
Yes.
And that's a real problem.
Do you think that? Well, I know it's probably not at the top of Theresa May's tray, but it's in the news. Local news, especially most weekends, especially in the hunting season. But do you think the Act could ever be repealed or strengthened and enforced?
Yeah, it's the trouble is, and this goes across the board really, no matter what you're talking about, whether you're talking about a relaxation on firearms legislation or you're talking about which is something that most people could hopefully be able to understand, like a relaxation on curbing of freedom of speech, for instance, which everybody should value. Once a government is able to take your freedom away, they are very reluctant to give it back. You don't see that. You see, as decades go by, you see restrictions on, free speech, you see restrictions on firearms, you see restrictions on hunting, you see restrictions on all kinds of things. You never hear about them going back on it. You get that in the United States sometimes, especially on a state-by-state level, where people are much more engaged, I suppose, with their democracy. But we don't see that here, because politicians don't want to. It's not in their interests. I mean, the Firearms Act is a classic one. I mean, you think of the 1997 handgun ban. I've done a video on that, by the way, about Dunblane and all of that sort of thing. And it's really easy to shoot down the arguments for why that happened, and show that there's a gaping hole already in the legislation that they never addressed at the time because they're so obsessed with just banning an object rather than the root cause of why that happened. Even when you point all of that out, you'll never find a politician who's going to just suddenly allow you to have handguns again, because all it takes is somebody to go out and shoot somebody and they'll get the blame for it and it will destroy their career. It's the same with freedom of speech. If it suddenly becomes a problem that people are saying things objectionable and they've just suddenly allowed that makes them look bad to the Daily Mail or whatever. So they never want to give freedom back, and so this is a problem. The fox hunting ban repealing of that ban would be great, and it may happen. I wouldn't hold your breath, to be honest. I'll be very surprised, but we shall see.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I go drag hunting, which is where I live in Anglesey. The land, it's too small, to do even a tent trail hunting where, you go back on yourself, and the landowners, there's not a lot of land that we can hunt over, so, we've got to be compliant. We can't just go trudging straight through the middle. We've got to follow a very specific line right around the outside, and it's becoming more and more difficult. But after doing the research, for this, and you see about these falls and stuff, I don't know if I'd actually want to go fox hunting. It's dangerous sport.
It is, yeah. If you're riding.
I also interviewed my hunt master at home, and he said, I go out with the pike tree and stuff like that, and he said, when I first went out, I couldn't believe it. The hunt master, he blew the horn, and this fox ran out the other side of the covert. But then, only about a third of the field followed him over the fence, and after the fox. 2/3 of the rest of the hunt, they don't actually see what's going on. They don't see the killing of the fox. They're not involved. People don't go hunting these days, for the kill. They go there for, the jolly and the dress up and the adrenaline and the community of it all. I mean, that's why we go hunting these days.
Well, that's what blew the mind of these hunt sabs, which they were enraged by, is the fact that they wanted these sort of, these toffs to come to sort of basically ruin their day. They wanted them to stop doing what they were doing. And it really did their head in when they said, well, okay, we won't kill foxes anymore, we'll just chase a trail. They couldn't stand that because they wanted to ruin their social occasion, their tradition. They wanted it to go. And then these people just carried on doing it anyway and having fun. And they just can't bear it. So now they want to overplay the idea that there are hunts killing foxes. And, we both know that it does go on. Of course it does. But it's nothing like as widespread as they try and make out. And it's in their interest to try and propagate that basically all hunts are guilty of killing foxes, because they want to try and have an excuse for their behaviour. And there is no excuse. Even if every hunter in the land was still hunting foxes, there's still no excuse for it. You just can't behave like that. And there is a law the police are starting to implement now. I can't remember the name of it, but it's regarding if somebody's going about their lawful business on land and you try and interrupt them, that's in itself is a criminal offence now. Yes. Because trespassing itself was always a civil thing; it wasn't a criminal thing. But now if you trespass and you're stopping someone going about their lawful business, then yeah, it is a criminal offence, and the police are starting to implement that. But from the police's point of view, these hunt sabs sort of saying, oh, they're always taking the hunter's side and all the rest of it. It's got nothing to do with the local bobby. It's because the police basically want a quiet life. They don't want loads of paperwork. They get somewhere, they see an altercation, and they just want it to end. And all they see is the hunt sabs are the ones causing the problem. The hunters aren't causing the problem. The hunters aren't upsetting anyone. They're just going about their business, and those are the guys who are doing it. It's no different to on a Saturday night when there's a big punch up, and they just say, look guys, just go home and just stop it and just don't do anything. And if one side was some guys, I don't know, doing whatever, who were supposed to be there, then yeah, they're going to pick on the other side who are causing the problem. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? That the police are there just to keep the peace and make sure that everyone's safe. And the hunt sabs are the ones who are making it unsafe, basically.
It's it is. It's difficult to imagine where I'm from. We have our local policeman and everyone knows who he is, but there would never be hunting going on at home. I know that the shoot that we go on, it's really, really far out in Anglesey, like the middle of nowhere, basically a Mordor of Anglesey.
Okay.
Really far back, but they still have trouble with people signposting. They signpost, I think, or something, and then it stops the shoot from taking place early enough because they'll signpost to go in a different direction, and when you go in a different direction back there,
right,
you
right
back round and do
yeah.
Just silly little things like that, and ruining businesses. I know after doing this research that there was one. I think there was a masked sab who went into a pub and cut all of the beer keg lines. So
right. Okay. That doesn't surprise me. That's almost one of the milder things that they tend to sort of get up to.
And then I don't know if you heard about the bomb threat in Blackburn, where there was a hunt ball, and the sabs phoned the police saying, "Oh, there's a bomb going off there, so they had to evacuate the whole hunt ball."
Right.
I don't know if you heard about that, but that was
no, I didn't hear about that. But that doesn't surprise me because again, this is the same mentality. This is almost like part of a worldwide phenomenon we've got at the moment, where you've got people with this collectivist mindset where they can't abide anyone with a different worldview, and then you've got people who tend to be more right wing who are like, well, I disagree with your point of view, but you can have it, or whatever, and I'm gonna have my point of view, and let's just get on with it. But you look at university campuses in the United States at the moment, and you've got, there was it was quite a while ago now, but you've got these, you've got these sort of feminist meets that they have, and then you've got these guys who wants to have a men's rights thing that they have, and as soon as they do that, these feminists come along and they set off a fire alarm and try and stop them from doing what they're doing, and it's just like, what is the matter with you? Why are you? If you don't approve of it, yes, you don't approve of it, and write an article to say I think that this is wrong and whatever. But you don't get the right to stop somebody doing something. I mean, they're not doing you any harm, and that's a perfect analogy. I mean, to go into a pub and cut the beer lines because I just don't like these people. I can't separate the fact that we both have a worldview, but we're still human beings and we might be able to be friends and just agree to disagree on certain subjects. It's like, no, I hate you and I must cut your beer lines and it causes you loads of problems. And it's like, well, why do you think like that? But it seems to be a common problem now, and it's a much bigger issue than hunting. And in fact, the stuff we've been seeing going on in the last few years, it almost helps people like us because it's letting the whole world see that we have a problem with people with this way of thinking, this mindset. It's, as I said, this collectivist kind of almost arrogant mindset where you think that you're so right that anyone who disagrees with you is like evil and should be dehumanized and treated appallingly. It's like some sort of mental illness as far as I can see. I don't know where it's come from, but yeah, it's the way it is.
Well, that's really all I've got. I think we've covered about everything and more. I can't really think what else. I'm just reading through this, but I think we definitely answered all the questions that I had. Yeah, about veganism. Now that's another video that I watched of yours.
Oh yeah.
That Australian girl.
Oh, freely. Yes.
Very, we're just coming back to the same sort of line of conversation. The just forcing of opinions.
Yeah, yeah.
If you don't agree with me, then you're not right, and you never will be. Now that forcing of opinion, I think that's the problem with, this modern society that's just ever changing.
Yeah.
They're correct, and that's what's causing all this hostility.
Well, it's collectivism. It's thinking of everyone as a group rather than as an individual, and thinking, well, yeah, I'm an individual person and I can have my opinion and that person can have their opinion and we can be friends. It's just that we'll disagree on that. I mean, that's what it comes down to, but they can't get their head around that. But veganism's an interesting one. And I did learn a bit about veganism after doing a couple of videos regarding that. And one of the things that might really surprise you is I have a couple of subscribers who are vegan. And they actually really approve of what I'm doing. And it's strange because, as I said, where my mum used to live, I went round to her house once after shooting rabbits, and I've got blood all down my trousers because I've been like gutting them and whatever. And I sit down there like to sort of say hello, and she's got a couple of friends around, and they're like full-on hippies basically, and they're vegan and all the rest of it. And I'm thinking, oh shit, they're gonna like be hating on me. But they're like, no, I really approve of what you're doing because as far as they're like, as far as I'm concerned, if you're gonna eat meat, if you've got the decency to go out and humanely dispatch your own meat, knowing that animal's had a good life and it's been it hasn't been mistreated, that's way more moral than buying meat from the supermarket. So they are a mixture, they are a mixed bunch, but some of them are completely insane. I mean, yeah, it beggars belief, to be honest. And they're very difficult. They can be very difficult to reason with. But I must admit, I do have to put the sort of hashtag not all on them because some of them are all right. It does depend. But overall, it's going to that same collectivist mindset, and especially with vegans because they tend to broaden the subject worldwide. And if obviously meat production, like in South America, for instance, people chop down the rainforests and so on to put cows on, and they're bad for global warming and all the rest of it. But I think of this subject as to my locality. I'm talking about Great Britain, and in Great Britain, nobody's chopping down any rainforests. We've just got a choice: do you want to grow crops, or do you want to grow pasture? If you grow pasture, it's good for the environment. It's good for wild animals. If you grow crops, it basically decimates native populations. So make your choice. What do you want? And if you're concerned about animal welfare, then either go hunting or buy game meat from a butcher that has been had a good life, or just generally buy meat that's more ethical. I mean, I try and do that as best I can. I don't want to see animals suffering unduly. I don't want to buy cheap beef that's been mistreated in some way. Apart from anything else, it tastes horrible because when they die, they're so tense that it makes the meat tough. So, but they just, they can be very difficult, and some of them are crazy. I mean, there's a guy on YouTube, if you check him out, Vegan Gains. He's completely insane. I mean, he's really aggressive as well. And if you have a look at his videos, I considered doing a debunking on him, but I really don't want to deal with him. Well, no, it would be good, because the thing is, you've got to think about it, right? And you'll learn more about this because you're doing journalism now. But you're trying to tap into other people's audiences to get a bigger audience. So he's got like 280,000 subscribers. So in some respects, if I had a big falling out with him and we're like doing a sort of response videos to each other, I've got nothing but, I'm just going to gain out of that situation. I'm going to get loads of subs. But he's such a nutcase, I just don't want to deal with him. Because you won't have a reasonable conversation with somebody like that. You'll be encountering arguments from emotion and silly ad hominem attacks rather than dealing with the issue at hand. So they're a very bunch, but by all means dip your toe in and see how you get on.
Yeah, see, I've got one of my best friends from home. She actually lives across the road from me here, which is really weird, in Leeds, but her housemates are vegans, and she's now become vegetarian, but she can't give up cheese.
Oh, right, okay.
I went home, I think it was over Christmas holidays, and my parents were away, so I just went round to hers. And her parents were cooking steak and chips, and they bought her, the corn.
Oh, yeah.
Standard stuff. She said, oh, you know what, that steak looks really nice. And I was like, oh, yeah, you're a vegetarian now, aren't you, though? And she's like, oh, yeah. Anyway, I went out of the room, went home, and I just knew that she had steak and chips. As soon as I left, she just couldn't let me see that she was like just being a part-time.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's this phrase that, as my dad always said, you know.
Trying though, I had to say, well done, for trying. I don't know if she is anymore, but she should have a go at it. So.
Yeah, well, if that's what she wants to do, that's fine. As I said, as long as we're not trying to impose it onto other people. But there is a simple test, really, to see how ethical your meat is. And as my dad always says, eat a nice piece of beef. I mean, I've just had roast beef with him now, so he'd say the same thing. But, he said, he was a happy beast when he died. And you know that because it tastes good. Meat that's been mistreated tastes horrible. So just don't eat horrible meat and you'll be all right. Yeah. That's really the main, the main test of it, really. It's not rocket science. But I just don't understand the mindset. It's like with vegans, they think that animals' lives have no purpose if we eat them. They think it's morally reprehensible, and they see those lambs running around in the field, and they see them in a completely different way to how I see them. They see them as like prisoners who are going to be brutally killed, and it's like, well, what sort of life do you think animals have in the wild? I mean, it's a pretty good life. You've got a field, you've got your food, you've got your brothers and sisters and your mother, and you run around and you're protected from predators, and eventually you'll be humanely dispatched. Well, that's a pretty good life, I think.
I do agree.
So I thought that came out okay, and I think I covered pretty much everything she wants to know. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Keep watching.